Well, this is another conversation with the president, and today have the deep honor and joy to talk to Dr. Gene Roop, former president at Bethany Theological Seminary. Gene, thank you for joining me today in this conversation.
I'm delighted to be with you. I always enjoy talking together with you. So thank you.
Now, some folks know you, and others, this may be an introduction. And so let me share a little bit about Dr. Eugene Frederick Roop. So Dr. Roop served as president of Bethany Theological Seminary from 1992 to 2008. He earned his bachelor's degree from Manchester College, now university, his MDiv from Bethany, and his PhD from the Claremont Graduate University. He taught at Earlham School of Religion, at Bethany Theological Seminary, and at Anderson University School of Religion in an academic career that spanned 50 years. Dr. Roop was ordained in the Church of the Brethren in 1967. He is married to Delora, and they have two adult children and grandchildren and extended family. We could
Five,
spend
five
lots and lots.
grandchildren.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could spend lots and lots of time talking about family, Gene. But we are here to talk about your academic interests and why Bethany. And so I've got questions for you about your life and particularly your service to Bethany. And let me begin by just saying thank you. So much of the work we do today at Bethany is because of your good work as not only president, but also professor of Old Testament here at Bethany. So just hear me say, Gene, I am grateful for your many
Okay.
years of
Well, thank
service.
you. Thank you.
So let's begin. So what got you interested in an academic career to begin with, and which teachers, mentors, and authors particularly inspired you?
Do you want an hour on that
Well,
one?
we've got 30
No.
minutes.
I grew up in the church, and the church goes back more generations than I know about. Uh, but the church is just something you went to, and it was my socialization much more than my huge high school I went to. Um, so it was really at Manchester that I was involved in biblical studies courses, and I don't remember much about them, except I remember two questions. The professor asked one time, well, Joseph knew that the baby was not his. Um, some people at that time figured that what happened was what often happens to the young girls who live in a country occupied by soldiers. And maybe that's what happened. And then the other question was uh, many people thought that Jesus' body was stolen and hidden someplace. Um, Christians insisted that God was responsible for both the beginning and the end. What do you think? Well, I never thought. Uh, you don't grow up thinking about such things, so I never thought. But all of a sudden, it was something I could study. And study is the one thing that I can do well, that I love to do. And so I began studying and actually never quit. It's just my DNA. I have our grandson, who's at Manchester now, is the fifth generation at that school. And so, that study, academic education goes back a long time for me. But it happened for me there. Then at Bethany, I was working with Graydon Snyder and Bob Neff, and I continued to study, and really got interested in the Hebrew Bible. And Bob helped me get in to Claremont Graduate University with Rolf Knierim, who was an import from Heidelberg, Germany, American money bought German uh, faculty members, and and I loved it. And I said,
Heidelberg, I mean, you're talking about one of the preeminent schools. So, as you're studying, then to be with a professor from Heidelberg, that's a big deal.
it was for me. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I had to learn a few German words, but that's okay. I need to do that for my degree anyway.
So who else was an influence? I mean, you talked about Bob and Grady, and obviously getting introduced to the controversies within Scripture, and that sparked this academic kind
Yeah.
of excitement.
Uh, the other major thing that happened was Harper Willett, who was the pastor of our church in Fort Wayne, and he came over to Manchester and took me to the Dairy Queen. And people say that if they'll anybody who takes me to eat ice cream, I'll do anything. Well, anyway, he he talked to me about going to Bethany for a year, just a year, because I know I was going on to education, but I thought it was I didn't think about it really in terms of biblical study, and there was a scholarship available that I could take for that year. Well, I never left, and I kept going, and until this day.
Well, and for all of us, as students, we know of your commentary on Genesis, and so what started as those controversies of the Bible, and you studying there in college, and then moving on through to graduate school and your PhD, it led to you writing then in the Believer's Church commentary, a whole commentary on Genesis, and that's at least when I talk to folks about their time at Bethany, that's what you're known for is Genesis.
Well, yeah, I spent a year in Cambridge, England, at Cambridge University of postdoctoral work. Uh, and my friend there was Walt Brueggemann. And Walt and I talked about a lot. He had just finished his commentary, and I had just finished my commentary. And he said to me, he said, Gene, I know who wrote that commentary. It could only be written by an Anabaptist. You all think of the world in terms of community, and not the rest of us don't necessarily think of the world in those terms, and that shows up in your commentary. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It isn't wrong, but it's just different.
It's so funny. You and I were just at a conference not too long ago, and people were quoting Walter Brueggemann,
Yeah.
and then I'm having a conversation with you, and you're like, "Yeah, Walt." Um,
Well,
Obviously, a little
he
different
was a good, he
relationship.
became a good friend. We walked to and from the university together and had a lot of fun conversation.
Amazing. Well, so you have this kind of scholarly life as you're studying and then teaching, and then you're called to be Bethany's president at a very difficult time, which I'm going to ask you about. But what led you to accept the call to be Bethany's president?
Well, as you know, Wayne Miller, the interim president, showed to the board that Bethany was within a few months of bankruptcy. So there wasn't a long line of people signed up to take that on. But I really felt in deep in my heart that the Church of the Brethren needed a seminary in order to support and pass on its identity and its mission. And and so when Lowell Flory came to me and he said, I want you to talk to the search committee for reasons I have no idea why, I did. And and out of that, I agreed to become the president. And well, I talked to my dad, and he was an executive in a public utility company, and so he told me a good deal about what administrative work meant, and he was convinced that I had the gifts for that. I wasn't, but he was. And 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 so I I talked to some other people too, and they really encouraged me to take it because of not just because of the financial situation, but because of my love for the church. So it was not the first 2 years were not the best years of my life, but that's all right.
Well, t tell me, I mean, we know what happened in those first few years. I mean, there was the selection of the site and the relocation
Um,
and the move. So tell me about the process of choosing to relocate the seminary and how and why was Richmond, Indiana, chosen as the new
um,
home for Bethany?
well, the first thing that to tell you is that that decision was actually made before I became president, and it was made by the board. So I knew where we were headed when I became uh, president. Um, but there are some specific things, and I asked the same question. One is they wanted to keep the seminary in the center of the country so that we wouldn't lose either coast. Um, they talked with the Mennonite Seminary at Elkhart, and they talked to some brethren schools, but they chose Richmond and the Quakers for a couple of reasons. One is they're enough like us that they shared the same kind of educational understanding, and but they're different enough that you didn't have to worry about us uh, kind of merging. We could maintain our own identity, which was critical, as you know. And in addition, they had a Lilly library, which was a very good library, is a very good library, which we could supplement. And they had a technological program that both of those two would save us a ton of money at that point, which was absolutely essential at that time, at that point. And that's the two primary defining reasons. There may have been others, but those are the couple of it was financially feasible to come there, and also uh, where they were located and who they were.
And you had some connection, one
I
with the
happened to
area.
have taught there for 7 years, so yeah.
Yeah. So
So
what was that like for you to having taught in Richmond, Indiana at the Earlham School of Religion, and then coming here as president of Bethany and establishing a new relationship?
well, it had been what, 15 years since I left there. And so most of the people had changed. There were very few people who had. Now, Dick Wood and I knew each other and we were friends, and Dick Wood wanted us there, which is another kind of factor we were clearly wanted. Um, so, uh, so I could change roles, and most people that were around um, didn't know me in the other role. So really, I was a stranger to them. I knew more about them than they knew about me.
But you knew this community, and so coming here, I mean, the great thing, Gene, is I hear stories about you, where you lived, and some of the organizations that you then joined, either as a member or in leadership. I mean, you really saw this as your home as you moved here as president.
Well, I thought we were moving into an location in which IU East and Earlham already occupied, and and so we had to become known as a separate identity. Now I worked very hard at that. Now I was not as successful about that as you have been, but that's okay. That doesn't bother me. I made a start, and I got us known as a separate identity in Richmond, and that was the best I could do.
No, and it was a great start. I mean, part of this is laying the foundation. So that leads me to my next question. What decisions made in the early 1990s set the seminary up for success 30 plus years later?
Well, I think there were a couple of things, but probably the most important thing that you picked up and made work. Uh, People like yourself were not leaving their home location to come to seminary. Oftentimes because their spouse had a, a job that wasn't relocatable. And there may have been other reasons too, but that was happening. And so we had to do something about that. Well, now one of the things that we started was the a satellite in Pennsylvania. But that didn't do much to help Virginia and Iowa and Kansas and California and et cetera. Um, so we did decide with a lot of reluctance and some promise to begin in the 1990s online education. And combined with intensives at at Bethany. Um, Now it turned out that that's been more important, perhaps, than any other decision we made.
So it has. I mean, that was a great decision. I would add a few things that you did along with the board. I think your fiscal policies were quite conservative. I mean, when we
They
moved here,
were.
we didn't have people didn't have any money,
Now,
and your business.
some of them accused me of making them count the number of squares of toilet paper that they used.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, we were close to bankrupt. I mean, when you start talking
Oh,
about, resources, so your business sense really was a gift when it came to selling the property at Oak Brook, establishing an endowment, and then all of the very conservative fiscal policies around that, which we've continued. 30 years later, we've got a little more money than you had,
yeah,
but
you
we've
do.
but we've continued that conservative fiscal
Uh, well,
orientation.
if we're going to continue to exist, it has to be a responsible. Now, you don't have to do it quite like we had to do it. But one of the other things my dad told me is you got to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are, um, or at least about some things. And that happened. I was just shocked at how many people wanted to help. Lowell Florey and Teresa Eschbach, Rick Gardner as dean, and a myriad of other people wanted to help. They believed in it, and so I was just there watching it happen.
Well, you have the finances, then you've got the program and going online, and we've obviously accelerated and expanded that. The satellite, you bring up the satellite, which we had at Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. I was one of the first students of that satellite, and if it wasn't for that satellite, I don't know if I would have ended up at Bethany because of the problem you mentioned, that so many of us were in ministry and it was hard for us to locate because of,
Yeah.
for me, it was my wife who was a teacher. And so I would say, Gene, one of the gifts that you also brought out of the number of gifts was just the ability, and I think this is more of a Bethany piece, to be expansive and innovative and malleable so that
Well,
we see
yeah,
what's happening and respond.
I really think that the seminary has got to change. Now, it's got to continue to give witness to our mission and values, but it's got to change and I think, honestly, Jeff, that probably there'll be other major changes in the second 25 years of this century. I don't know what they'll be, uh, but I hope Bethany continues its capacity to change.
And I agree. And I hope that for the church as well, and that Bethany can be a leader in that. So when you think about your time at Bethany, and as you observe the seminary now, and I'm very grateful for your engagement. You are very present, you're engaged, interested, and very supportive, which I think is a gift as the current president. When you think about, over this change, what makes you proud? What makes you proud of your alma mater and the seminary you served?
Well, I think I've said a lot about what makes me proud. Makes me proud that uh, you've been able to take what you were given. Admittedly, it had some strength, but you were able to take what was given and, and change it and expand it so that it actually becomes a school connected to the world. And I'm really happy about that. It also has some expanded connections within the U.S., but of course, Nigeria is the other major connection. So I'm really happy about that. Uh, and I'm happy about the people that continue to be uh, interested in Bethany and want to help you all. You've also been able to find some people, I don't know if they're smarter than you are, but they're at least able to supplement what you're doing in a strong way. So that there's now the church is changing and the number of people that are available and out of higher education is changing. So we'll see what happens. But I'm really proud of those things that have happened. The people that grew to love Bethany and the capacity to change while maintaining its Anabaptist pietist witness.
I think it's so critical, Gene, that Anabaptist pietist witness, relying on the spirit and leading into community, obviously being engaged in the world, but maintaining an identity. All of those pieces are so relevant for today. And so just to be kind of bland and like other schools, that's not going to provide a future. It really is being distinct and sharing those values. So I know you're continuing to read and write. You talked about that academic pursuit. What are you reading and writing today? What do former
Well,
presidents read and write?
I'm I'm in a book club that uh, pulls me out of the Bible and tells me there are other things to read, like uh, Richard Rohr's what Tears of Things. And I'm sorry, here. There's uh, there's other things to read, but in addition, I continue to study. Uh, I've got a phone call that won't stop, even though I try to make it stop. It's local, but um,
Everyone's
see,
demanding for your
the thing
attention,
is,
Gene.
my grandchildren are very clear that I'm a child of the previous century, and so in terms of technology, I can do some things, but compared to what they can do, I'm well. In fact, one time I was playing a game with one of them, and I said, "Well, how am I doing?" And he said, "Well, well, you're probably in third grade." So, uh, but be that as it may, um, I continue to study the Bible, and I was just finished writing a curriculum on Genesis for the Church of the Brethren and the Mennonites, and I told them when they asked me to do it. In other words, you think I haven't gotten out of the first book yet, uh, and probably I haven't. But I love narrative and I love that. Um, and then also the district has asked me uh, to write a essay to go in the district newsletter every month, and I love that. Um, so I've got things to write, and even
Well, here's the question about Genesis. So you have written and written and written articles and books about
yeah,
Genesis, and so now you write a Bible study about Genesis. And some people could say, well, Gene Roop could just take old writings and
uh,
repackage them and move forward. So reading Genesis at your age and stage, what are you finding new in Genesis, or are you finding things
well,
that are relevant today that you look at with fresh eyes?
well, I am finding things new every time I read it, or whatever book I'm reading. I see something new. Biblical study has radically changed from when I started, and I have changed with it. It moved really from a historical study where we were talking about the historical Jesus and so forth, and the historical Moses, um, uh, to really it was I think, the Jewish community coming to the Society of Biblical Literature meeting. They said, wait a minute, truth is conveyed in narrative and in poetry, not just history. And so that's what's happened. All of a sudden, we discovered narrative and poetry. And the Bible is largely, at least the Hebrew Bible, is largely narrative and poetry. And so everyone, when they read poetry or when they read narrative, they hear new things. And for example, in Genesis 12, we always start with Genesis 12 because Abraham was called and sent. And so if you want to call people for ministry, you use Genesis 12, except that his story doesn't begin in Genesis 12. It begins in 11. And it begins, they were headed from Ur to, to Canaan, and they didn't make it. They stopped at Haran, where his father died. And his wife, Sarah, discovered she was not able to have children. Now, what kind of a life do they have? They haven't gotten where they intended to go, and they have no future. And God gave them a future. And so that's what I wrote about this time. God gives us a future, and we need to see it and hear it and embrace it, but it's there.
You,
Okay, enough of
you,
that.
no, I mean you and I could talk about the shift from modernity to postmodernity, from historical studies to narrative. I mean that's not just in biblical studies. I mean that's pervasive and so critical now, particularly in talking with folks that are of younger generations about narrative and story. And then you end, Gene, what a great place to end this interview is that God gives us a future. I think
Yeah.
for the church, we're looking around and saying, what is our future? Do we have a future? For the seminary, 30 more than 30 years ago, we wondered if we would have a future. It's just the question of today with all the turmoil and polarization, and yet here you have it from former President Roop at Bethany that there in Genesis, God says there's a future, which I think is such a great word to end our conversation on, Gene.
Thanks. Oh, it's
You,
been
th-
fun.
this has been great. I can talk to you for hours. I
Yeah,
love to
we
hear the
could.
stories. I
We,
love to hear the stories.
half an
Um,
hour is only the beginning.
it is only the beginning, so we may have to have part two of this interview.
Okay.
But for those that know you, what a great kind of way to catch up. And for those that do not know you, I think a great introduction to your kind of academic commitments, your work in the church, your service to Bethany, and how you continue to dream and to think about your friend Walt, to have a prophetic imagination and to think about the future, as you said, that God gives us. So, Gene, thanks so much. Look forward to being
Thank,
with you
thank you, Jeff.
again. All right,
Bye bye.
bye-bye.